Welcome everyone, I'm Nancy. I'm the owner of Civic and Painting in Hampden. You need to make sure you have napkins, 3 sizes of brushes. I have a small, medium, and large. I have my canvas, and then I have paints. And we always use, on our Zoom classes, we always use primary colors, yellow, red, blue, and then black and white. And I don't have blue on my palette right now, and I'll tell you why. This painting doesn't require it, but we do put it in the kits for a good reason. If you decide that you don't want a fall painting today, I want to give you the option. You could always, instead of the yellow and orange that we have here, you could make it all blue if you want a summer painting. And then when we get to the yellow and orange leaves, which I think are really pretty, and Denver's going to be looking like this in just a few weeks. The mountains are already starting to look like this. But if you are choosing to do a blue background, then you can always come in with yellow and blue makes green leaves and make it a spring or summer painting. So that's why you have options there. All right, first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover my entire canvas with water. Now, if you lived in a place like Indonesia or New Orleans or Mississippi or someplace that's super humid, you wouldn't need to do this step. But in Denver and other places in the West, it's really dry. So we have to hydrate our canvas first to make sure that our paint doesn't dry out too quickly, that it stays liquid. So I'll give you just a second to do that. I'm gonna grab my apron. All right, here we go. So the first thing I'm gonna do is this is gonna look silly because I have a white canvas, but I want my paint to blend. So I'm gonna pick up white on my brush. And this is the silly part. I'm gonna put my hand right about here just to get an idea of where my sun or moon, depending on the time of day is. It's just white, so it's hard to know. Looks like sun. But anyway, I'm going to put it right about here. So it's about a closed hand span away from each side. And then in the upper half of your painting. And I'm going to I have white paint on both sides of my big brush. And I'm just going to set it there. And then I'm going to slowly spin around. And then just slowly, just let my brush make a circle. And I'm going to make a circle about the size, I'd say a little bigger than a volleyball. Sorry, not a volleyball, a little bigger than a softball. Not as big as a volleyball. So maybe the size of a cantaloupe, something like that. So that we have white paint on there. That's the idea. Your sun may be a little higher or lower than mine. It doesn't really matter. No one's ever going to see the original painting. They're only going to see yours, and they're going to call you a genius. So don't worry about it. All right, so once I have my white circle on there about the size of a melon, I'm not even going to clean my brush. It still has some white paint on it. I'm going to pick up some yellow on it. And then I'm going to go around. I'm going to overlap with the edges of that circle. And I'm going to work my way out farther. And I do have this glob here. After I work my way out farther, I'll try to pick it up carefully and transfer it to the outside of my circle. I don't want to rub it into the white. I basically want a white softball size sun in the middle, and then I want it to get more vibrant as it goes out. So the more I pick up yellow paint, the more vibrant it will become, because that white, I didn't pick up any more white. There was a little bit of white left on my brush, and I just let it naturally blend in when I first started. But now I'm just using plain old yellow. And anytime you have these globs, just go ahead and pick them up with your brush and then move them out. So basically it looks like a reverse fried egg. And I'm going to keep picking up more yellow, and I'm going to finish off the top with some yellow. If your paint is thick like pudding, add water. I want it to be the consistency of motor oil or Hershey's syrup. I want it to be a thick liquid, not a soft solid. So if yours isn't as runny as mine, add some water, mix in some water until it's a thick liquid, not a smooth solid. And then I'm also going to just pick up any paint that I can that's in a glob, and I'm just going to paint the sides of my canvas too. Paint the sides and the top. And the reason I'm painting the tops and the sides as I go is then I don't need to put it in a frame, and I'll save a lot of money. And it will look great. It'll look like the painting was just wrapped right around the wooden frame that is under the canvas. And it has a more modern look this way as well. If you want to put it in a frame, go for it. And I can just take what's left on my dirty brush and just use up whatever's on my dirty brush on the bottom. You get as far as I do, and I don't expect anyone to paint as quickly as I do. When you do get as far as I do, if your yellow doesn't look gradual coming out from the white, you can always pick up more white and go around your sun again, and then just pull it out until that white runs out, and it will make this more gradual. What we're going for is what hairdressers call an ombre effect. And what I mean by that is gradual. The color changes gradually, so it's white in the center, but it's very gradual as it goes out. And it gets more intense as it goes out. And we're going to be doing more to that, so don't worry about it too much. People will frequently tell you that you can't blend with acrylics. People who paint with oil colors like to tell you that. I paint with oils and watercolors, and it's true that acrylics are the most difficult for blending, but you absolutely can. And we're going to do it right now. And in fact, we already did. We blended our white with our yellow. You just have to do it. You just have to know how to do it, basically. So I'm going to make an orange by pulling over a little bit of my red, a little bit of my yellow. I'm not going into the middle of the yellow, the middle of the red, and taking a glob, because I'm trying to not to disrupt all of the color as I mix. I want to leave some of it the virgin color that it is. So just pull some in to a new spot, and that's a good way to mix. And I'm going to keep pulling it in. The red is more powerful than the yellow, so you're going to need more yellow. I'm going to pull it in until I get an orange, like that. Now with my orange, I'm going to come out, here's the melon of white, and then here's the yellow around it. I'm going to start about the size of a basketball going out with my orange. And I'm not waiting till everything is perfectly dry to do this. That's part of the blending process with acrylics. You have to keep moving so that if it's not totally dry, and that's going to help you blend. So I'm just going to go round and round. And then I'm not going to pick up any more, but I'm going to carefully, very slowly and carefully, slowly and carefully, slowly and carefully, with very little paint on my brush, because I didn't pick up any more. I'm going to circle in a little closer to the center. Not too much, just a little. Okay? Then I'm going to circle back out. And then I'm going to pick up more orange to keep building on the outside of that circle. And just keep building up more orange as you go. My painting has streaks in it, and streaks are good. Do you see that? Streaks are really good because when you're looking up at the sun, your eyes create streaks around the sun. It's not real good for your eyes, but it makes it look like there's streaks of light around it. Of course, the object itself doesn't have streaks, but the light looks like streaks. So if you paint it with the streaks in it, that's how your eye would perceive it. So streaks are good, and streaks add some visual interest to the painting. I don't want to blend away all my streaks. I can blend away some if I don't really like streaks. But just know that streaks make your painting interesting. This particular painter didn't really leave streaks. I know her, she used to work for me, and she likes things very neat and meticulous, so it's really your call. If you want to blend and blend and blend and blend until you have no streaks, that's fine. Let me show you how to do that. Basically, you just pick up your water. You would, clean your brush really well. And then you would dab your water in your napkin to make sure it's clean. Pick up water, bang off any drips. You don't want any drips on it. And then you would just go over what you've already painted with just a couple of drops of water, and just keep going over it and over it and over it with just a couple of drops of water. Not more than that, because it would drip and you don't want it to drip. But the more you paint over it with a damp brush, just moisten with a couple of drops of water, the more you'll get rid of your streaks. So it's up to you and your personality if you like the streaks or don't like the streaks. Personally, I think a little bit of streaks makes it really interesting. But it's your call, it's your painting. As Bob Ross would say, it's your world. The more you go over it, the more your streaks disappear. Oh, but my brush was a little dirty, so I just picked up more streaks. I can always go back in with a little white if I accidentally stuck in a streak. No big deal. This painting is forgiving because you can always go back over something, put some white down, paint it again. All right. And I bet you everyone can guess what I'm going to do after that. And I'm not going to rush you. If I'm giving you time to do that. But when you are ready, we're just going to pick up red. And we're going to start with red in the corners, curving them so that they overlap with the orange. Paint the sides red, the top red. And then with a dry brush, just blend that red into the orange with a dry brush. If it doesn't blend, then maybe what you have is too dry, so go ahead and add a couple of drops of water and it should start to blend. And then I'll do the same thing down here. So everyone's going to be at a different point now, and that's okay. I just want you to see the general idea is we start with white. It goes out pale yellow, brighter yellow, orange, and then finally to red. And when you want to blend, make sure to get all the paint off your brush. Add some water. Knock it off so there's no drips. Have it on your napkin. And then you can go over where the two colors meet to blend. So when people tell you, oh, you can't blend with acrylics, tell them you know how. A little bit of water, just a little bit of water. And you can come all the way down to the bottom with your red. We're going to be going across with a band of brown in a minute, but we'll just put that right over it. Don't forget to paint your sides. And for those who joined a little bit later, you may have missed the part about the sides. If you paint the sides, that's called a gallery wrap, and you won't need a frame. That'll save you a lot of money. I like to step back from my painting. After I get the background in, I like to step back and take a look at it, because if you're in a museum, no one comes up to the museum piece and looks at a painting like this, because the guard would be all over them. Paintings are meant to be viewed about 10 to 15 feet away, and so you want to see what your guests in your home will see when they come in your home and see it on the wall. So seeing it up this close is really misleading. So I step back 10 or 15 feet while I paint, and then I take a look at it and ask myself, what will other people see when they come in my house? What will I see every day when I come in my house? That's really what you want. You want it to look good from that view. So I encourage you to walk away. I'll give you a few minutes, walk away, look at your painting from farther away. You might have to come in and make your white a little brighter, like I'm doing right now. You might have to come in and add a little bit more yellow to make it brighter. But you won't know that when you're right up on top of it. My theory is creating a masterpiece is just like raising children. If you are in their face all day long, you can't appreciate them, and they can't appreciate you either. But when you get a breather, you step back and you see them from a distance. Same thing with marriage, actually, I think. When you see them from a distance, you come back and you can appreciate them anew. So same thing with the painting. I'm going to step back, leave mine alone a bit, and I'm going to look at it from far away. And I hope you will too. I stepped back and put a little more yellow on mine, but I couldn't tell that from close up. At the very bottom down here, we have brown. It's not a perfect brown, so I think I can create it by just pulling in a little bit of my yellow, a little bit of my red, and a little bit of my black, and stir that around until I get something resembling brown. Usually you need blue in it, so if you want to pull in a little blue, you can as well. Although black paint does contain some blue in it, some blue pigment. So you might get away with just yellow, red, and black. We'll see. You don't need a lot of it, just a little bit. I'm just pulling it from all these colors. And then I'm just going to put that at the very bottom. The very bottom. It's basically going to be the, yeah, it made a nice brown. It's basically just the next color that comes out. So I put it at the bottom. I can paint the very bottom with it. Made a very nice brown, like a wood brown. And then just curve this area so it looks like it curves just like the red did. And don't pick up any more of it because it's very little paint. Just let your brush run out.
What were the colors again that you used to make the brown?
It was just a little bit of yellow. I just pulled a little bit of yellow, a little bit of red, a little bit of black. But notice I didn't go into the middle of my yellow. I didn't go into the middle of my red or the middle of my black. I want to leave those colors pretty pure if I can. So I just kind of scoot them together. Make sure the very bottom of your canvas is the darkest. After you put on some brown, you really want to darken up just the very bottom. Because the whole idea is that this gets darker as you go out from the sun. And then where your red and your brown meet, clean off your brush, dab it on the napkin so there's no drips, and then go over it with a couple drops of water just to blend. So one thing that I'm noticing is, you'll see that on I just went over this with just water, and sometimes when you add water to a canvas and the paint is still too wet, it'll actually remove paint instead of put paint on. So the key to fixing that is I'll just wait. I'll wait till it's drier. I'll just give it time. And then when it's drier, I can go back on and put some red down there to blend between my red and brown. It's just too wet. So I was using water. If I come back in with my red, it will blend better. It just wasn't ready for water. So anytime your paint is your brush is picking up paint instead of putting it down, just let it dry a minute. It's got too much water in it then.
Can you repeat that?
I'm going to give you plenty of time to perfect your background. Most of this painting is background. The trees are just going to be fun. But do step away and see if it looks like it all fades gradually. And remember, a couple drops of water on a clean brush and go over it will help to blend those colors. You can also put the lighter color over the darker color where they meet and that will also blend them together better. Blending is difficult with acrylic, so if yours looks anything like this, congratulations, that's awesome. So we're going to let this dry for about 5 minutes, okay? When we come back, we're not ready yet, but when we do come back, I'm going to use a business card to paint with. You could also, so if you have a half a paper business card, you can do that, or you can tear off a piece of your cardboard box. So all we need is a little cardboard square. And that's how we're going to be putting our highlights and shadows onto our tree. And I'll be right back. I'm going to go ahead and show you the next step. If your painting is still wet and you want to just watch, that's okay. But I'll just show you, and then when you think yours is ready, you can jump in. So in this particular painting, they have 6 trees. And you'll notice that there's 2 on this side and 4 on this side, which is kind of odd. Anytime you paint nature, you want to stay away from complete symmetry. This painting does have the sun in the middle, so that is a symmetry issue, but that's okay. What makes it more natural looking is by having the tree numbers different on each side. In general, when you're painting nature, you want to stay from perfection, because if you paint something that looks perfect and symmetrical, it'll look like Disney World, and it'll just look kind of fake. Disney World is fun, but it doesn't look real. And so by dividing up the trees, 2 on this side, 4 on that side, and this one coming off at an angle, it makes it look more natural. So I'm gonna paint my 2 trees on this side first to show you. And again, if your painting's so wet, just wave it around. You can just watch what I do. I'm using my big brush. I'm putting paint on both sides of it. And then I always start at the bottom when I paint a tree, because more paint will be deposited at the bottom. And then that's where your tree needs to be the thickest. And then it needs to be thinner as it goes up. So that it has a base, right? So I'm going to start at the bottom, put on a little dab, make sure you have plenty of paint on your brush. And then I'm going to come up, and I'm going to be really deliberate about not making this tree straight. Don't make it straight. Nature is never perfect. I want it straight, and I want it all the way up to the top and a little bit curvy. Make sure your base is the widest. And I might have to go through it 3 or 4 times to really make sure that paint's on there good. But always come up from the base. Always come up from the base. And more pressure at the base and less pressure at the top. Another good way to do it is you can start at the base flat. See, flat. And then as you go, turn your brush so that you're getting a smaller surface, and that makes the top of the tree thinner. We always want our trees to be widest at the base and thinner at the top. So we're only going to do our trunks, and then we'll come back with a smaller brush to do our branches. So there's one trunk. And I'm going to put another one right next to it, because every tree needs a friend, right? I'm going to pull up and twist a little as I go to get it thinner. Always make the base widest, because if you don't have a wider base than the rest of the tree, it won't be able to stand up. It needs that footing, sort of. Whoa, I really made a bump there. That's okay. Trees have bumps. That was a mistake, but it's a happy accident. Trees get bumps when they have a scar. So if an animal broke off a limb, was climbing it and broke off a limb, or who knows, maybe you got some kind of a cut and then it healed. So if your trees are a little gnarly looking and not straight and not perfect, that's even better. In fact, I probably should have made this one leaning in toward the sun, but that's okay. My painting is going to be different than your painting. Your painting is going to be different than the original and everyone else's, and that's what we want. But since I do like this lean to it, when I do come in with my branches, I can have one that leans, and that's kind of nice too. I told you we weren't going to be doing branches, but I'm just using the side of my brush. I do like a little angle in my paintings. So it's like a tree divided. And if you don't remember all the things, if you're still waiting for your paint to dry or waving it around or something, you don't remember all the things I'm telling you about each tree, it doesn't matter. Just make sure that you have either an odd number of trees, that's one way to avoid symmetry, or if you have an even number, have them divided on either side. Either way works. As long as it's not perfect and matchy-matchy, because then it will look like Disney World or the outside of a hotel. The first tree on the other side actually starts at the bottom, but then it goes through the sun. Always make sure it's widest at the base, always at the base. Twist your brush as you go to get it thinner at the top. There's two more trees that are pretty standard, but I want to draw your attention to the one on the far left. That one actually is kind of interesting. It comes in from the side and leans, so I can start it way over here and lean it in. And then those last two will just go in between these. And if I paint with the side of my brush, I have a thinner surface. And then when you get to this tree on the side, have it go off the canvas a little bit. Again, if your trees aren't just like mine, who cares? No one will ever see them. So now I just have to make room for two trees in here, that's all. There's one.
Are we using white for the trees?
I'm only using white.
Okay.
Is that what you said?
Yes, thank you.
Always make sure it's thicker at the base. Twist your brush as you go up so it gets thinner. You can either switch to a medium brush if it's too difficult to get that thinner look at the top, or you can just turn your brush to the side and get the thinner surface that way. Both ways work. We didn't even use the medium brush, but we can do it for the branches. All right, and so my last tree goes in between these. Make sure it's curvy. Make it curvy. We don't want any trees without personality. Now you'll see I have some areas at the top where it's a little imperfect, that's fine. I can cover those areas with leaves. That's the great thing about the leaves. I can cover over anything that's a mistake. And then once I get my trees on, and again, I know you're farther behind me, but I want to be ahead of you so you can hear me. Once I get my trees on, I'm going to put on branches with the white paint. And I basically just start in the bottom of the tree, just like I did for all the other steps, and then come off of the tree. And so in from the trunk and up, and then wiggle and pull, wiggle and pull. And make them curvy, make them gnarly and crooked, because they really would be in real life. Some of them go right through the sun. And the same thing with your medium brush. You can start out flat at the bottom, holding it flat for the wider surface. And then as you pull up, switch the smaller surface to get a thinner line. The one thing that I don't want you to do on your trees, don't start in the sky and pull down to the trunk. Because any place that you touch first is going to deposit more paint. And if you start in the sky and pull down, you're going to have more paint in the sky, and then your tree is going to look backward. It's not going to be thicker where it attaches to the trunk and getting thinner. It'll look too thick. If we started in the sky and came in, we'd have a really thick branch at the end of it, and that would look more like a cactus. So if you want cactuses, do that. But as I'm coming up through the branches, or the trunks, and then the branches, to make little branches, I'm wiggling and pulling so that it gets thinner, and it also it has some personality to it. They're not straight. And my tree trunks are still wet when I'm doing this, that's fine. I'm also making sure that I'm not putting two exactly coming out the same spot on the tree, because they tend to not grow that way. They tend to not come out exactly at the same point on both sides. The tree will sprout a branch, then it'll grow a little more, and it'll sprout a branch on the other side, then it'll grow a little more, sprout a branch on the other side. It's not like arms on people where they come out at the same side, same place on both sides at the same time. And you can put as little or as few of these as you want, because a lot of them are going to just be covered up by leaves anyway. Just make sure that your branches are thinner than your trunks. You can also use your baby brush if that's easier for you to make those branches. That works as well. And if you have any branches that you really don't like, just remember where they are and we'll throw leaves on them later, okay? So I'm not teaching a new step now. I just want to go through my checklist of how to make a tree, right? So the base is always going to be the widest part of the tree. So it stands. The tree is going to get thinner as it goes up. If your tree is fatter at the top, you can always make the bottom a little wider so it makes sense. The branches should always be thinner than the trunk it comes out of. And the twigs coming off the branches should always be thinner than the branches they come out of. Always pull from the trunk out instead of the sky in. And if you did all that, you're going to have a really nice looking tree. And if your painting was still a little bit wet and you picked up some color on your aspens, that's actually cool because when the sun's out, light reflects all over in a forest. And sometimes it puts what looks like other colors in a trunk. So if you did that, consider it a happy accident and you're a genius, okay? And if you didn't, that's good too. All right, the next part is going to be where we use that business card. If you can find a business card in your wallet that you don't need anymore, you can cut it in half, and we'll paint with that. If you don't have one, then tear off a piece of your cardboard box. What we need is a thin piece of cardboard. We're actually going to be just painting with this side. If you can't find a thin piece of cardboard anywhere, then I'll show you how to do it with a brush. There's more than one way, but the cardboard is my favorite way. So I'll give you a minute to go find a piece of cardboard, okay? I think the edge tabs on the cardboard box are really great for this, but I'll give you a minute to do that. So hopefully you found a piece of cardboard, whether it's a business card or a piece of your pizza box. And I'm going to show you how to put the scars on these aspen trees. And let me just tell you real quick, a few years ago, I went to the Cherry Creek Arts Festival with my husband, and we saw this big painting that was about, I don't know, 7 feet by 10 feet. And they wanted $10,000 for it. And it was basically these trees. And my husband said, you could do that. And I thought, well, all I need is a garage door. But I'm going to show you how to make some $10,000 trees, okay? All right, then you'll just need a garage door. Okay, so I'm going to take my piece of cardboard. I'm going to tap it into my paint. You should have black paint that's on your plate, not in your cup, but that's on your plate. And it should be kind of flat. It doesn't have to be perfectly flat, but just flat enough, like ice cream melted on the sidewalk. And what I want is just to have this little bit of black on the tip of my card. Hopefully you can see that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to steady my hand, hopefully it's dry, steady my hand some time, tap it on the side, and then pull across. I'm going to tap it on the side of my tree somewhere else, pull across. I can flip the card over to get a slightly different look, or a little more pressure or a little less pressure. But stop before you get to the end of the tree. Now I made a little oops, but that's no big deal. And then I can do the same thing on the other side, but steady it first. Hold on to it. Take your time. Hold on to it. Tap it on the side. Pull across. Tap it on the side. Steady it. Pull across. Just, do this step slow enough so that you're really getting it on the tree and not out in space. This is where most people say, ooh, ah. Pretty cool, huh? That's my $10,000 card trick. And then, if you have more paint on your card, it'll give you more scarring. If you have less on, it'll give you less scarring. If you make a mistake and you just have this great big black blob, let it dry and then dip it in white paint and go over it again, and it'll make an even more interesting second layer. But just take your time with this. Line it up with the side, pull across. And here's another little thing. If you pull across but kind of angle like a U, it actually makes your tree look more three-dimensional. That's a little more difficult, but see how it's kind of a U there? Just take your time with it. Take your time. And I'm not lining it up perfectly every time I do it. I might skip a part of the tree in between. I'm only going to do this on the trunks and the very big branches. On the small branches, I'm going to show you how to do it with a brush. But isn't that cool? You guys like that? Let me show you real close. See that? So tapping it on, pulling across. Tapping it on, steadying my hand, pulling it across. Pulling it across. Steady my hand. On these smaller branches, I don't need to come in from both sides. So this creates either an aspen or a birch. Now, when you get to the smaller branches, you can just use the card itself and just pawn a line if you want. If it's so small that you can't really pull anything across, use the card and just kind of tap on a line. Or you can take skinny brush, your baby brush, and try to do it with your brush. But this is an easy way. The card is easy. I haven't heard anyone say anything. What do you guys think of this technique? Are you all intimidated, or
No, it's cool. Just trying to get the hang of it.
Yeah, it's a little tricky at first. When we do our class, people are like, whoa, I can hear their reaction when we're in the studio. It's kind of fun. I really like making aspen trees this way. And people will be so impressed. They'll think that you spent all day with a little brush, with a tiny little brush, getting all those details on. You don't have to tell them. All I did was take a business card, dip it in a little black paint, and pull it across. Don't tell them our secret, okay? Make them take a class and they'll.
I feel like this
For
is like
$10,000.
like a Bob Ross moment. Like when you're watching Bob Ross and then all of a sudden it like comes to life. It's like the trees look more realistic now.
Yep, and Bob did this with I'm Bob Ross certified, by the way. We're not doing Bob Ross classes right now because they're 6 hours long oil painting classes. So because of the pandemic, we stopped those temporarily. But I am Ross certified, and we do trees exactly this way, except we use a knife. You can do, instead of a business card, you just use a knife. People tend to be, we have plastic knives here that we can do for this, use this for. People tend to be a little intimidated with a knife, whereas if I hand them a business card, they're more willing to try something new. So you can do exactly the same with the palette knife. Paint called palette knives, exactly the same. Like I said, on the bigger trunks, come in from the other side too. But on the small branches, you don't have to come in from both sides. Yeah, it just makes it pop right off the canvas, doesn't it? Tell your friends you took all day making every little line. Why not? No one will, I'll keep your secret. Remember, you're not trying to cover the white. You're just adding scars to the white. So if you have a ton of black on it, let it dry. Then go over and do the same thing again using white. And then you'll get some of your white back, and it will also create a really interesting third layer. So if you made a mistake and you put on too much, all is not lost. It'll just get more interesting. The one that's across the sun's a little harder because I have to visualize in my head where the tree is. I just want to show you, see this one that has a lot of black on it? If you go over with a little bit of white, it does make another really cool layer. I mean, you could go over these, you know, in lots of layers all day long if you wanted. We don't need to. We're going to be putting leaves on in a minute, but yeah, it's pretty cool. I always tell the kids in my classes, you want to see a card trick? And they like that card trick. We're almost done with our painting. And then just for kicks, if you have any bumps or bulges or strange places, you can always take your black brush and add a little knot. Sometimes the knots look like an eye in the tree. If you're in a romantic mood and you want to hurt somebody, you can also carve little initials with your black brush. So it looks like a carving. Just to write, you just chisel your brush, your tiny brush on your plate, spinning it back and forth to get the finest point you can. So if you want to write your initials, you know, whatever your initials are, LM plus JB or whatever, just chisel your brush like that on your plate, spinning it back and forth. Find a wide spot on your tree somewhere. And if you're making this as a gift for somebody, that's kind of fun. I'm going to go ahead and give you the last step in case you have kids that you need to get back to at 3 o'clock, and I don't want anything to run over, so I'm going to go ahead and give you the last step. Basically, the last step is pretty easy. All you do for the last step is take a little bit of white, if you have a little bit of white left, and then mix it in with your yellow, just a tiny bit. I would say 20 parts yellow to 1 part white. It just helps your yellow show up better. And if you don't have any yellow left, that's okay. I'm gonna just pop on with my medium brush leaves all over, all over. My yellow's not showing up well because I ran out of white, so I'm gonna have to go get some more white, but I'm gonna pop on leaves in yellow, literally all over near any branches. And you can hide, remember, cover up any spots that were mistakes. First, we're gonna do it in yellow. And it's just, I'm going back and forth, I just dip my brush in the yellow and just going over trunks and branches and very randomly, just all over on the top half of the painting. And then I'll go into my orange and do the same thing. And then I have a layer of orange leaves. Now we're not making perfect leaf shapes. That would take us all day. If you have the rest of the day and you want to make a perfect leaf shape, go for it. But this painting's really pretty without it. And I'm just putting on the orange leaves, top half of my painting, very randomly, covering up any mistake parts that I might find on a tree. And I can get several pops of color from one dab of paint. And then I'll go into my red and do the same thing. Now, if you were one of the people who might have considered doing a black background, pardon me, a blue background when we started all this, instead of yellow and orange, you would want to just do green leaves, green and yellow. And green is made with yellow mixed with blue. So if anybody was doing a blue background instead of the orange and yellow, your leaves should be green and yellow. For a spring or fall painting. We do this painting in different versions for different times of the year. I like to have most of my red leaves farther out from the center because it kind of frames the painting and brings your eye in a little more when the lighter colors are toward the sun. And you can put as many or as few on. And actually they are down below too. I just noticed they did put them down below as well. It's not just in the top half of the painting. I'm just kind of circling around. And I'm going to put more yellow ones near the center than to show that the light is reflecting off of the leaves closer to the sun, and more red ones around the outside. It brings your eye in. I keep tapping my phone because it keeps telling me that the temperature on the phone is high. I'm not quite sure what to do about that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and give you my ending spiel, but you can stay as long as you want and finish up your painting, so not to worry. I won't be turning it off. And for those of us who are joining us tomorrow on YouTube or anytime after this on YouTube, you don't have to worry, just paint as long as you need. All right, thank you so much for joining me today at Sipping and Painting Hampden. I hope you enjoyed this lovely painting called Autumn Glow. And now that you know how to make aspen trees, you can go make 7 feet by 10 feet paintings and sell them at art fairs for $10,000. Just be sure you let them know that I taught you how to do that. Thank you so much, really, it's been a pleasure, and I hope you enjoyed this lovely painting. And I look forward to when you can come in the studio and join me again soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome.